Well, good morning. My name is Corey Williams, Public Information Officer with the U.S. Small Business Administration's Office of Disaster Assistance. And first off, my heart goes out to all those businesses, homeowners, renters, and nonprofits that may have been devastated by these tornadoes. And no matter how long I've been with the agency, I've been with the agency 17 years now. And I always say for anyone that's a homeowner, renter, business owner, this is their Katrina. And whatever my job is to make sure that we get help any Little Rock, or anyone in Pulaski County, whether it's Jacksonville, Sherwood, Wynn, all the counties that may have been impacted by these devastating tornadoes. So what I want to do is not only talk about the business aspect, but talk about the nonprofits, and then we'll also kind of cover the homeowners and renters. Now, in regard to businesses, so the first step in the disaster recovery process is to register with FEMA. And there's 4 ways now to actually register with FEMA. You can go to disasterassistance.gov. You can call the 800 number, which is 800-621-3362, which spells out FEMA. You can download the FEMA mobile app. And we also have disaster recovery centers that are throughout the state. There's one in Little Rock at the West Central Community Center. There's one in North Little Rock at the community center over there right across from the library. There's a center in Sherwood that's actually in the Wildwood Medical Building. And then there's also one in Jacksonville at the United Methodist Church. So the disaster recovery centers are kind of that one-stop shop for disaster recovery centers. You'll have FEMA representatives there. You'll have SBA representatives there as well. And there are a number of county and state organizations, whether it's getting a driver's license, because a lot of people don't realize that during the course of a disaster, there's medical records, there's, deeds, there's driver's licenses that are lost and, whenever and all the devastation. So the one thing I always say is take advantage of all the resources at the Disaster Recovery Center while they're open, because again, a lot of people don't want to have that relationship where they're just dealing with a phone call or dealing with a computer app. So being able to talk to someone face to face and really be able to help in that process, it really kind of eases the peace of mind. And there's also crisis counselors as well. So again, once someone registers with FEMA, they may receive the referral to the U.S. Small Business Administration's Office of Disaster Assistance. Now, we're also known as the Office of Disaster Recovery and Resiliency. That's our new branding under our Administrator, Isabella Casillas Guzman. Now, once that referral happens, the biggest question that we always get is why SBA? Well, a lot of people don't realize in times of disaster, the U.S. Small Business Administration not only assists businesses of all sizes, but homeowners, renters, and nonprofits. So businesses can borrow up to $2 million to repair and replace disaster damaged real estate, machinery, inventory, and equipment. But the biggest thing that I always emphasize in times of disaster for our businesses is the need for working capital to sustain the business during the recovery period. So many times during a disaster, you can see windows blown out. You can see your roof blown off. You can see water in the building, or you can see a building that's charred by a wildfire. One thing we don't see is the economic injury that these devastating disasters cause. One, think about meeting your ordinary lease obligations, because now there's no storefront, or paying your employees when the books are already tight, drops in sales, canceled contracts, postponed contracts. We've even seen it even in the basic things where businesses can't even maintain their Chamber of Commerce dues. Those are all signs of economic injury. And it's easy to see, again, the water in the building, a building just totally destroyed by the tornado. But the one thing that I always emphasize for a small business owner is the need for working capital during times of disaster. And as a small business owner myself, I take pride in being a champion for our small businesses and to understand that economic injury is almost like that silent killer when it comes to businesses. Now, even though there's a 9-month deadline, and the deadline is January 2nd, 2024, for the economic injury, a lot of businesses wait until month 5, month 6, 7, 8, and 9 to realize, oh, wow, I've had a drop in contract, I've had a drop in, sales for the last, 3 months. Or I've had to lay off my best employee, Stacy, because my books are tight. Or, I had, a contract that we had with a vendor in Jacksonville. Now, because of their building getting destroyed, that contract got canceled or postponed. So those, again, are signs of economic injury. And, a lot of businesses, our small business are, kind of the heartbeat of America in regard to the business community. And for our small businesses to have a situation where they can't always see it. That's why I always try to be as very proactive as possible in letting businesses be early in the process to see the signs. As soon as you see a sign of a canceled contract, a postponed contract, if you see the signs where we have to cut an employee's hours or lay off an employee, those are usually the signs that start that process where we actually need to try to at least look at getting working capital to sustain the business. Or even think about a storefront business, a physical location. Now there's no physical place to go to. Of course, we saw the areas near Rodney Pearman. Thank you, Thurlow, for coming in. And, I've had the pleasure of speaking at the West Village Merchants Association, where there's literally, most of those businesses are totally out, totally destroyed. So having to recreate that business, that's where working capital loans can come in at. Now, again, for SBA, you can borrow up to $2 million for business purposes, for up to, for our business loans. And again, the one thing that I always emphasize is that with the prevalent number of disasters that have taken place over the last couple of years, and not only this year, they said this is unfortunately the year of the tornado. I think we've had a record-breaking number of tornadoes this year. To have that working capital, and also with our administrator, Isabella Casillas Guzman, there's 2 programs that she initiated as part of the prevalent number of disasters that have taken place. We have a 0% interest accrual for the entire first year. And then there's also a 12-month deferment for any business owner for the entire first year. So for any business owner that may need working capital, or have a need for any physical loss, to be able to know that you can borrow money from SBA with a 0% interest accrual and a 12-month deferment may be the difference in that business staying afloat during the course of this disaster. Now, interest rates are as low as 4%, no closing costs, no cost to apply, no prepayment penalties. And a lot of people don't realize that there's a difference between the SBA Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience versus traditional SBA. So with traditional SBA loans, they are funded by banks, but they're guaranteed by SBA. With our Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience, all of our loans are directly funded by the U.S. Treasury. So these are our federal taxpayer dollars at work. And I always hear, well, we're blessed. Our damage wasn't enough. Well, everyone has to pay Uncle Sam. So to take advantage of all the programs that are here is your right as a taxpayer to make sure these are all subsidized loans, because again, you most likely, Chris is here as well. I think you can go get a business loan with a 12-month deferment and a 0% interest accrual for the entire first year for a small business owner. But the one thing also most businesses ask is, well, Corey, I may need a little bit of capital, but I don't want to pledge collateral. So one of the things SBA also offers is that a business can borrow up to $25,000 for their physical loans and up to $25,000 for their economic injury or working capital, and that's an unsecured loan. So you can't cross collateralize, so you can't get $50,000 for working capital and 0 for physical loss. But to be able to even get up to 25,000 for the physical loss and up to 25,000 for working capital, again, it might be the difference between keeping that door open and not having to close 9 or 10 months down the road. Now, for nonprofits, a lot of people don't realize, as I make the transition from our businesses, a lot of people don't realize that nonprofits can be impacted the same as businesses. So businesses and nonprofits can borrow up to $2 million to repair, replace disaster damage real estate, machinery, inventory, equipment. Interest rates for nonprofits is 2.375 fixed at that interest rate of, and that's up to 30 years. Again, all of our loans are amortized up to 30 years. And the one thing I always say for our nonprofits, think about a church. I had the pleasure of going to the Resurrection Sunday Church service at the New Commandment Church of God in Christ in Jacksonville. And, it was heartbreaking, but it was also, heartwarming at the same time, because what happened, they had just had their mortgage burning service like March 15th, or I think it was like March 15th. And literally, less than 3 weeks later, their entire church is destroyed. So, when you think about a church like that, and I've personally handheld, Pastor Miller to go through the entire process to be eligible for not only the SBA disaster loan programs, but also the actual FEMA public assistance for houses of worship. But think about in April, or May, that, the New Commandment Church of God in Christ, or any church in Jacksonville, Sherwood, Little Rock, they may have lost their church. There's a number of church festivals. There's a number of other church events. And when those events are canceled, when those events are postponed, that is economic injury, because that was anticipated revenue on a particular day. So, or even a situation where they have a festival that was set to take place and they had 100 vendors that was going to come in for a community festival. But now, because of the tornadoes, now they only have 50 vendors. Well, again, that's a 50% economic injury in regard to the vendor sales. So when you start thinking about, churches, you start thinking about nonprofit organizations that have big events that now may be canceled, maybe postponed, those particular nonprofits, because they do so few events throughout the course of a year, that creates that economic injury for that nonprofit. And, that's why it's so important that to kind of paint a picture that nonprofits can also have the same damage as well economically, and to also be able to prepare by having working capital to sustain that nonprofit during the course of a disaster. Now, I've had the pleasure of being able to work with this agency and help, disaster recovery victims for 17 years now. And the one thing that I always say is that everything that we do, we want to make sure that our businesses, our nonprofits know about the programs, because again, there's stories and there's a report that's come out that 75% of small businesses impacted within a disaster fail within the first year. I personally, as a champion for small businesses, don't want to see our Little Rock small businesses, fail within a year. I don't want to see our Jacksonville small businesses fail within a year. I don't want to see our Wynn small businesses fail within a year. I don't want to see our Sherwood nonprofit fail within a year, because of the economic injury that can happen as a result of these devastating tornadoes. But again, to be proactive and to understand the process that SBA plays in that role is very vital. And that's why we encourage you to visit one of the disaster recovery centers. We also have a business recovery center that's open at the Terry Library. So, whether you're, if you want to kind of have that one-stop shop as a nonprofit or a business, that opportunity to go to the Terry Library and meet with an SBA representative is available as well. So to summarize the business and nonprofit aspect, identify economic injury early. And if there's a situation where that business, that nonprofit may have to kind of reimagine, those are all purposes of the working capital or economic injury disaster loans to keep that business intact during this recovery period. Now, I'm going to transition a little bit to homeowners and renters because a lot of people don't realize that SBA also helps out homeowners and renters as well. So once a homeowner or renter actually registers with FEMA, they, depending on their income and depending on their household size, they may receive a referral to the U.S. Small Business Administration. And I was just talking with Stacy this morning. She got registered with FEMA. She got that email. She's like, what the heck? Like, why am I getting this email? And a lot of people have that question. Why SBA? Again, in times of disaster, the U.S. Small Business Administration not only helps out businesses of all sizes, but homeowners, renters, and nonprofits. Homeowners can borrow up to $200,000 to repair and replace disaster damaged real estate, and up to $40,000 to repair and replace disaster damaged personal property, which would include any disaster damaged vehicles. Renters also can borrow up to $40,000 to repair and replace disaster damaged personal property, as well as any disaster damaged vehicles as well. Interest rates are as low as 2.375%, no closing costs, no cost to apply, no prepayment penalties. Loans are amortized up to 30 years. And again, because of the prevalent number of disasters, our administrator has those two programs in place, which to me are so vital for a homeowner or renter to get back on their feet. 0% interest accrual, as well as that 12-month deferment. And a lot of people will say, well, Corey, like, I have my insurance pending. Well, you can actually apply for the SBA loan during that process because some insurance recovery may take 60 days, 90 days, or 120 days. So to be able to go ahead and get the SBA loan funds and start that recovery process sooner rather than waiting on insurance. And then once you get the insurance check, you can turn right around and pay the SBA loan off because of the 12-month deferment and because of the 0% interest accrual. Now, one of the most critical elements as a homeowner or renter as to why they need to apply for SBA, because if we're unable to approve a homeowner or renter for an SBA loan, we're going to refer them right back to FEMA for other needs assistance, which is a grant-based program that, a homeowner or renter is eligible for, if they're unable to be approved for an SBA disaster assistance loan. So it's very important to really understand the full components of the program, not only for the businesses, homeowners, renters, and nonprofits. So with that, I'm going to hold all my questions, and I want to introduce Faustino Salinas, who's the private sector specialist with FEMA, to go ahead and make a presentation as well.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. He was pretty good, wasn't he? I'm not that good. I have notes. So I want to thank you for inviting me. My name is Faustino Salinas. I'm with the private sector with FEMA. I've been with the agency for 17 years. However, this is my first public speaking engagement. So anyways, as we all know, on April 2nd, the president signed a major declaration for 3 counties in Arkansas, which was Cross, Lone Oak, and Pulaski. We want everybody that had any damages to register. But the first thing that they have to do is contact their local or their insurance companies, whether it be the rental insurance or homeowners insurance, because FEMA doesn't duplicate benefits. So the first thing to do is to call your insurance agent and make sure you take pictures, anything that's damaged, take a picture of that, because FEMA will be asking for you for that information once you register with FEMA. They'll be asking about the damages that you had during the disaster. You got it. Like he said, like Corey said, there was 4 ways to register. the www.disasterassistance.gov, the 1-800-621-3362. That line is open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Central Time. And of course, we have the 4 locations, the disaster recovery centers. When you call FEMA for assistance, they'll be needing your current phone number, your address of the damaged dwelling, Social Security, a general list of damages, losses, and if you're insured. They'll need your policy number and the agent company. Remember to keep receipts and all purchases related to the cleanup and repair. Document disaster damage if possible. Any photos, anything like that. Make sure you document stuff. Disaster assistance may include help with temporary lodging, some repairs, along with other programs to assist family recoveries and efforts. After you register, you'll be issued they'll issue a inspection. The inspector will call you and they'll want to set up a time for the inspection of the damages. If you're not able to be there, if you have a co-applicant on the registration, have them present, because if not, then that's going to delay the process, the FEMA process. And after 3 times, then they're going to say, you know, this is a no good applicant, and just push it off, and then you'll be dropped at the very back of the list. The inspector will have a badge, and they'll have your FEMA information. And I'm going to get to the scams and frauds, because that's been happening here in the area. But they will not be asking for any monetary, anything monetary when they go visit you. Here we've had cases where they have a badge. They say they're with FEMA, but then they say, well, give me $100 and for your inspection, because that's what we charge. FEMA doesn't charge anything. It's free to the public. Scams and frauds. Inspectors and other officials working in the areas of the impacted storms, they carry, of course, badges, IDs, and FEMA, and of course, FEMA and SBA would have their badge also. And if you have any questions or concerns, you can call the 800 number, or you can call or go to the recovery center, and they have a list of all the inspectors and everybody that's in the area. Do not give your banking information to the inspector. That's been another big thing that's been going on in the areas. They want your checking account number and stuff. Do not give it. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to call the 1-800 number. And also the state of Arkansas has a phone number that you can call. If you're suspicious of any frauds or scams going on in the area, you can call them at 501-682-2007, or email them at OAG@arkansasag.gov. And of course, the disaster recovery centers, they're temporary offices, but they're there for at least a good while. Except the one for Sherwood, which will be closing this Saturday. The hours for all the DRCs are 8 to 6 Monday through Saturday, and Sunday 1 to 6. So that's the end of my presentation. I apologize again. This is my first public speaking.
Great job.
Thank you very much.
Open it up for questions. Yeah. Does anybody have any immediate questions in here?
Do you have for the loans to the SBA, what's the minimum credit scoring? I'm assuming that you mentioned to be approved, and if not for credit payment, is that one of the determining factors?
Yes.
Corey, will you repeat it just so?
Yes. So the question that Krista asked is what criteria does SBA look for in determining eligibility for an SBA loan? So we do look at credit history and we do look at repayment ability. Now, another mission of our administrator, Isabel Casillas-Guzman, as well as the Biden administration, is to also address underserved communities, because we know that in a lot of our underserved communities, there's been issues with credit and repayment ability. So there are a number of initiatives that there's no exact credit score, and that's a great question, Chris, that we kind of look at. We want to look at the whole factor, and actually some of the programs that are being initiated, if someone is actually declined for an SBA loan, they do have up to 6 months to apply for reconsideration. And we are starting credit repair workshops for those that are in the underserved communities who may have credit issues, where they can work with a counselor. And we also have our Arkansas Small Business Technology Development Center, because a lot of people don't realize is that once someone is declined for an SBA loan, not only do they know they have the 6 months to apply for reconsideration, but they can work with a counselor at our Arkansas Small Business Technology Development Center to address maybe the repayment issues or credit issues. And they're also entitled to a copy of their credit report. And I think that SBA, I think we pull TransUnion, I want to say, for our SBA credit report, but they'll say it on the determination letter if someone happens to be declined. But during COVID, just to give you a little bit of insight, I think our minimum credit score is about 575. But again, we are understanding that situations have changed since COVID, but there's not really like a locked in, you have to have this score to be considered for an SBA loan. And because of the programs and initiatives that our administrators put in place, it will definitely make it, hopefully easier through the process to even apply for reconsideration.
That was like for homeowners.
Yes, that's going to be approximately the same situation, same scoring. But again, there's also that, that reconsideration period within that 6 months that we strongly encourage them to take advantage of. But also by them applying and not getting the approval, then we can refer them right back to FEMA for the other needs assistance as well. So now businesses can't be referred back to FEMA because there's no grant assistance for business. But again, working with the Arkansas Small Business Technology Development Center and some of our representatives, they can assist in that process for reconsideration in that case.
I guess somebody that lost an automobile that wasn't insured, but their home wasn't impacted, is that still applicable?
They are still eligible. So they would apply as a renter, and the loan would be amortized up to 30 years. A lot of people say, I don't want a 30-year note for my car. But what that allows them to do is, remember, keep in mind, there's no prepayment penalty, no cost to apply, and the loan is amortized up to 30 years at that lower interest rate of the 2.375. So then they can pay it off in 2 years or 3 years, whenever they want to pay it off. But
so no more specifically, if their car was at their place of employment, but where they live wasn't impacted at all, is that cool?
Because that's a disaster damage vehicle as a result. Because I always, my kind of background as an attorney, as well as I use a but-for test. So, but for the tornado, they wouldn't have had damage to their car. So that's why they're eligible as, the owner of that vehicle, because their vehicle was damaged as a result of the tornado. So they are eligible, but they should go ahead and register with FEMA as well, because there may be assistance. But then if they receive their referral to the U.S. Small Business Administration, make sure to complete the application, because again, if we're unable to approve them for that SBA loan, we'll refer them back to FEMA. Yes, sir.
So SBA gives up $200 for homeowner. Is that in addition to the insurance that you didn't get the full amount that you thought you should have got?
Great question. So SBA is very similar to FEMA in the fact that we don't actually duplicate benefits. Now, we cover underinsured or uninsured. So in that situation, if they had insurance, then they can't get an SBA loan and then turn around and get their insurance recovery too. We cover the shortfall. But one of the things I wanted to touch on as well is mitigation. And this is where whenever a homeowner or a business owner actually rebuilds, they want to rebuild stronger. So SBA offers up to 20% of the total loss for mitigative measures. And there's a number, as a worksheet I have right here. Let's see. So for the mitigation, a couple of projects that could be approved for mitigative measures. I have to do like Tina. I have to get my forms too sometimes. So you can install hail protection, like hail guards, shields, or wire mesh around your HVAC equipment. You can also upgrade your building's materials, shingles, windows, skylights, or siding to withstand significant impact. Upgrade to steel, and then also upgrade to steel gutters and downspouts. I don't know what a downspout is, but it's a mitigative measure. So what happens is, I always stay in my lane. We have mitigation specialists that work, and FEMA has mitigation specialists as well. But that allows that homeowner to, where if there was a shortfall, they can potentially get additional funds to kind of safeguard their home from future harm and tornadoes. And the one thing is, this is my 4th presidential declaration in the state of Arkansas, my 17 years. And so chances are, unfortunately, there's going to be other disasters that come to Arkansas. And the best way to do it is to safeguard from future harm. Now, for any mitigation project to be approved, it has to be of the similar peril of this disaster. So someone can't get a retaining wall for this disaster because that's not related to the tornadoes, but they can be approved for any of those hail projects or wind projects, or like stronger roof, different things like that. But that may cover that difference in like any kind of extra shortfall in case the insurance that they need extra funds. That's why I always tell everyone to go ahead and apply for a mitigation loan in addition to the actual SBA real estate loan to give them those extra funds. Yes, sir.
I had a couple of my clients reach out to me just yesterday, and they live in apartments in Shopwood, okay? And so in their situation, they're now back in their apartment, but they weren't able to be there for 8 to 10 days. So all the food spoiled, the power, the water. So some of them had expenses and things, it disrupted their lives. So now it's time for rent. And they're both coming up short, and they're trying to, so with between FEMA and SBA, what is their
great question. Now let me defer to Tino on that in regard to for renters as far as the assistance.
So say if they've already applied, they can register for the other needs assistance program. And that includes medical, funeral, childcare, moving, storage expenses, or other essential items that they had in their home when the disaster hit, when the tornado hit. So it's possible that they could qualify for the other needs assistance program.
And Tino, can you touch on like the transitional sheltering and housing assistance? That may also kind of give a little insight on, is that something you have some notes on?
Let me look, because yeah, and also if they had any out-of-pocket expenses, that's another thing that maybe that they may qualify for. Lodging expenses that were covered, that were not covered by insurance, or any living expenses, loss of use, eligible. Yeah, so anything that they inquired that the insurance didn't cover, it's possible that people will cover that. And so they need to call back to the 1-800 number, or go to the recovery center and talk to a specialist there, because they can give them more information on what they qualify for.
And also, another great point, there's also disaster legal services that's at the disaster recovery centers as well. So one of the things that if there's any lease issues that have to come about as a result of, like having to pay the rent, and then there's no place to stay, or different things like that, they're displaced, any lease issues, they can go to the disaster recovery center and talk to disaster legal services. But SBA doesn't provide like replacement of like rent money for them. So that's not our lane. That's why I wanted to defer to Tino. But I did want to touch on landlords. Landlords are treated similar to businesses, to where they also can borrow up to $2 million to repair, replace disaster damage real estate, machinery, inventory, equipment, but also the landlord can actually receive lost rents as a part of the working capital loan as well. So keep in mind, let's say we have that whole apartment complex or 20 units that were destroyed. Well, again, for that landlord, that's 20 buildings that's lost rent for maybe 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. So that landlord may be eligible for a low interest loan for our business, at the low, it's a 4% interest rate, but that may be something that you want to look into as well. Yes, sir.
So when you were speaking about landlords, would they be eligible for the things like the glass windows that are broken and downspouts and things like that of a commercial project that wasn't residential?
They would. Business owners can apply for the 20% of their total loss, and there's a cap, I believe, for homeowners up to 300,000 is like the total amount for mitigative measures. But for the businesses, I'm not sure about that number, but I want to say there's no minimum threshold or no maximum threshold like the 300,000. So businesses, again, we want to make sure our businesses stay intact. So they should definitely take advantage of any mitigation projects that are related to the similar peril. Great question. Questions on Zoom?
I have a question on, and you may have already touched on this, but when is this application process over?
Great question. So the physical deadline is June 1st, 2023. Now, again, if you are a homeowner, business owner, a renter, nonprofit, and you had physical loss things we can see. We can see a roof blown off. We can see water in the building. We can see windows blown out. If you had physical damage, that deadline is June 1st, 2023. Now, if you have economic injury only, that deadline is January 2nd, 2024. But if you have a combination of both, then you need to at least put in the application by June 1st, 2023.
And what happens if after June 1st, you find damage, physical damage that happened that you weren't aware of?
Right.
Let me go like sprinkler system.
Right. Well, and that's an outstanding question, Stacey. So what happens is that's why we want to make sure that people get their application in by June 1st, because for SBA loans, they have up to 2 years to apply for increases in loan amounts. If there's any undiscovered thing, especially in flooding disasters, I've seen so many times when the water gets in the studs and it rises up and it causes mold. And even with tornadoes, I mean, there was some rain and that may have gotten to the studs and different things. So that's the whole thing, is to get into the system by June 1st, because then again, you can apply for increases up to 2 years from the date of the promissory note.
I don't have any more questions online. Does anybody else have any questions here?
Yes.
Do you provide assistance for a business who they were leasing a building and it got damaged and they can no longer work out of there and they don't want to continue lease, on finding them a new place? Like, she just wants to find a new place. Where does she go to?
Another outstanding question. Now, one of the things that for me, because I believe in keeping our communities intact, keeping Wynn businesses in Wynn, keeping Little Rock and Little Rock, I don't push relocation, but relocation programs are available through the U.S. Small Business Administration. And that's something that, whether they're a homeowner, a renter, business, a nonprofit, if they need to relocate, they are eligible for relocation expenses through SBA. So great question, but I just don't ever push it, because we do like our communities to stay intact, and that's a big mission of SBA with our Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience, is for our communities to stay intact. But she definitely is eligible for relocation expenses. Yes, sir.
What about for that same homeowner who didn't get enough insurance, they thought, but didn't want to go ahead and tear it down and redevelop the new construction? Is there any assistance around the new construction piece?
Yes, it is. So if you're talking about building on the same lot, everything,
Well, you already got insurance, but not enough. And we're in the spot of tearing it down and rebuilding.
Yeah, so that would probably be where the actual mitigation measures, because if they're going to start and rebuild something brand new, they're probably going to rebuild it to code and rebuild it to, you know, the EF5 tornado standards. So yes, they would most likely be eligible for extra, not only the mitigation funds, but also actually the full rebuilding costs. But they probably will need a little more mitigation money since they're actually trying to build a brand new home out of it. But the one thing I always say is that there's no eligibility determination in the field. So they need to work very closely with their case manager at our processing center in Fort Worth with any projects. So they shouldn't just start a project and just say, well, SBA is going to come in and just help them out. They need to make sure that they present like any plans or anything before and get it approved by SBA in that process. And that's like the same with mobile homes and different things that may have been damaged or destroyed, because sometimes mobile homes may want to move from you know, mobile home to more of a, you know, fixed structure. So those are projects that can be approved, but you don't want to just start it and say, oh, well, SBA is going to come and help me, I'm done, you know. So, but they need to make sure they talk to their case manager and let them know exactly what they're trying to do and have a plan set up.
I've got two follow-ups.
Yeah, sure.
You said up to 20%. What's 20%?
20% of the total loss. So let's say we have a homeowner here in Little Rock. They have a $400,000 home. Insurance is covering $300,000. So immediately right now they have $100,000 shortfall. But let's say the home is totally destroyed. So now they're not only eligible for the extra $100,000. Now they're also eligible for an additional $80,000. So now for that same project where they would have normally only been able to be eligible for $100,000, now they're eligible for $180,000 because now they're getting that extra $80,000 or 20% of the $400,000. So it's the total loss of the, you know, that is not the loan amount, it's the total loss.
And then the second is, if she decides to sell the lot, that next buyer, do they inherit that same?
Great question. So what? So if she decides to sell, I'm assuming she's relocating, right? So the way SBA and the federal government programs work is that we would have to take collateral on the damaged property as well as the relocation property. So she can sell the lot, but once she sells the lot, the proceeds of that lot would have to go towards the actual SBA loan. So, you know, the whole purpose of SBA disaster office, SBA Office of Disaster Recovery Resiliency programs is to get you back in the position the day before the tornadoes hit. So we can't have someone get a rental property and then turn around and try to get another SBA loan. So that's why if they're relocating, that's fine. But we do have to take the damaged property as collateral, and any proceeds, if it's sold, would have to be applied towards the loan.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
I don't know that this is it happened here during this tornado, but what if your house or business is in a historic property and it's damaged? Like, what's the threshold for where you go, we can't save this, we are allowed to rebuild without going the parameters of the historic?
That is an outstanding question. And actually, with historic properties, if a property is deemed to be in a historic area, they may be eligible for FEMA public assistance, because again, keeping communities intact is the main thing. So there may be public assistance funds that are available if they are in a historic district. But again, one of the main requirements that if someone is in that historic area, they have to still exhaust all their federal resources. So they're going to have to apply for SBA loan and get a decision either way. But what they should do if they are in a historic area, they should reach out to Andy Travison, I think it was the Pulaski County Emergency Manager, or wherever they are, if they're their county emergency manager, and reach out to them and kind of let them know that they are in a historic district and what are their options, because there's different deadlines when it comes to that public assistance aspect.
So you would recommend, like, if somebody's in a historic neighborhood right now and their business is fine, they should reach out for the future.
Well, They still have
They
to.
need to get on some sort of list.
Well, if they didn't have damage, remember, I always say use that but-for test. So if they didn't have any damage to their business, then most likely there's no eligibility, because if there's no loss, there's no eligibility. So, but you know, but they still could have economic injury in that situation. But I thought you were talking about if they were like in a business and the business was destroyed, then
I'm just thinking about currently, right? Like today, people who are in historic parts of town, like, can they even like upgrade to withstand a tornado if it's a historic building?
Another great question, and unfortunately, no. So what happens is, you know, using that but-for test, if they didn't have any physical loss, then they can't really, because 20% of zero is zero. So it's like, so if they have no loss physically, then we can't be approved for, and that may be one of the things.
If they wanted to do it on their own dime.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know what if the historic homes, if you're allowed to upgrade it to withstand a tornado.
They probably could. I mean, no, nothing can stop them from using their own funds to make any kind of repairs or renovations. But still, I would have them, you know, make sure they talk to their city, usually their city planning department or their county planning department, to find out what things are eligible, because there may be a lot of different rules in regard to historic preservation to keep the value and the static value of that area. So they definitely should, if they're going to do a project, they probably should reach out to their city and county official. Great questions.
Anybody else? Okay.
Are there any flyers that like, you know, I could send out to all the tenants that sort of cover some of what you're saying here, or especially about like damage auto, like how they can apply?
Definitely stop by. I have what we call our disaster code. It's a 3-step process from the registration to FEMA, and then if they're referred over to SBA, I can send that electronically to you as well.
Is that what you're giving me?
That's what that's a part of it, but there's another flyer I'll give as well, and I'll send that over to you. That way you can disseminate it to the chamber.
So we will be passing out a presentation to everybody. We'll send it electronically after the webinar.
Yes, sir.
First, excellent presentation. You did a heck of a job.
Thank you, sir.
I liked you in the beginning, but I loved you when you said you didn't know what else.
I always stay in my lane. I'm like, there's certain things I know.
On the Zoom deal, y'all are Zooming this?
We are, yes.
Is a link available that you can send to us?
Yes, I can send the recording afterwards.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We're also Facebook Living, and I'm not going to pretend I do know a downspout, but I'm not good at technology. Is that available? Yeah. So it will also be available for reviewing. And then everybody who's here, who's signed up electronically, and we have your email address, we'll be sending that presentation that Corey has. There's some papers in the back for those that are here. If you're on Facebook Live and you want that presentation, go ahead and message or comment your email address, and we'll make sure that you get that as well. If that's all the questions, I know Corey and Faustino are going to hang around for a few minutes if you have questions that you didn't get to ask, but we want to be good with your time today. So we'll finish up the webinar, and thank you so much, Corey. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks to our regional chamber. Really appreciate you inviting me to speak.
We're happy to help.
Yeah.
Thank you.